And welcome back to the Outsider Sports Show. Clint Schweitzer, Noah Groniger. We are talking football. I know that is a crazy thought here in Kansas City right now, but we have Mr. Jeffri Chadiha from ESPN.com joining us right now. Jeff, how's everything going in your world? Are you able to stay focused on the task at hand with this football stuff as the World Series is going on here?
It's pretty hard when you got the Royals doing what they're doing. I was out there yesterday at Game 2 of the World Series, and it was a pretty incredible experience. You know, I've been here for 8 years and never seen this team be where they're at and this town doing what it's doing. So, yeah, it does feel a lot like football is a stop because nobody's talking about the Chiefs or wearing red. It's all a sea of blue right now in Kansas City.
Well, we're gonna try to reinvigorate some fans and try to get some people talking football again. I know that that will certainly be the case as even when the World Series is over, no matter what. But the Kansas City Chiefs come in here at 3-3, Jeff, and kind of a weird team. We saw this team with a mind-numbing loss to the Titans to open the season, and then have played really good football since then at 3-3 and right there behind the Chargers after the big win. Where do you see this Chiefs team fitting in here in the AFC?
You know, I think they're right in the middle of the pack. I think they have to like where they're at. You know, when you look at the first 6 games of the season, if you look at those games at the start of the year, I think the overriding belief was that the Patriots, the Niners, those are going to be the 2 toughest games in there, and possibly San Diego. And Miami, Denver, the Patriots and San Francisco would be the 3 toughest games, and San Diego, the Dolphins, and Titans were winnable. They didn't go about, the way we thought they would go about as far as getting to 3-3, but I think 3-3 coming out of that first 6 games was a great deal for them, especially with 2 being at home, only 2 being at home. Now they're looking at a much softer part of their schedule. The Rams come in, the Jets, the Bills. They have a chance to really make a power move in the AFC, and right now you look at this conference, right now aside from, Denver, Indianapolis, and the Patriots, there's a lot of teams out there who are really trying to figure out where they belong. And I think that Kansas City is right there in the mix with those teams.
Well, what do you see coming up this weekend for the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the St. Louis Rams? The Rams beat the Seahawks last week with a fake punt. Beautiful call by Jeff Fisher. He's known for his special teams calls out there. And what do you see with the Chiefs going up against Austin Davis, who's playing surprisingly well for the St. Louis Rams?
I think it's a great matchup for the Chiefs because the one thing, saw that game against Seattle, between the Rams and Seattle, the one thing Seattle's really struggled with right now is pass rush. And what I've seen from the Chiefs in the last few weeks is their pass rush really coming along, and then they're finding a lot of stability in the secondary now. Guys like Fleming and Ron Parker and Philip Gaines, people who at the start of this year you were like, can these guys really get it done? They're starting to grow up a little bit, and you add those guys to the mix of the Tom Mahalis, the Justin Houston's, people who've already been there, been the Pro Bowls. You get Eric Berry back. It might not be this week, but you have the makings of a pretty good defense again. And so I think that they're going to be able to get after Austin Davis. I think they can take away some of the things the Rams do really well. And I think that the offense, it seems like week to week you don't know what it's going to be, but they've got more weapons than we initially thought they would have. And I think Alex Smith, if he's able to play well, should get a win here.
Well, how do these Kansas City Chiefs slow down Austin Davis? You mentioned the pass rush, but Brett Favre thinks he's the next Tom Brady. So how are the Chiefs going to come about going after Austin?
Well, hopefully he's like Tom Brady, like 3-4 years down the road. He played great against Seattle. To come in and get a win and be efficient as he was, no big mistakes. I think that's hats off to him for doing that. I know that in the preseason you heard a lot of good things about him, and he's had kind of a rocky career, up and down career, but he does have some things you like to see in a quarterback, especially from the intangible standpoint. But I do think that one thing that's been proven to be true is the longer you play in this league as a young quarterback, the more challenges you're going to face. And I think you're going to see more and more teams starting to figure him out, figuring out how to defend him. And I think, again, with that pass rush, people in his face, it's a lot harder to play quarterback in the NFL.
This is kind of an interesting topic we had brought up earlier, but with the Royals doing what they're doing, getting to a World Series, in Major League Baseball, which is, let's face it, harder to win when you're a smaller market team. There's not the revenue sharing. There's not a salary cap. I was talking about someone the other day. I said, does this put pressure on the Chiefs to get to a Super Bowl themselves? I said, no. It puts a gun to the Chiefs' head to get to a Super Bowl. Do you do you follow that line of thinking, and do you think that something like this can put a lot of pressure on the Chiefs to equal this success?
I think that there is some element of that. I think what it might do more is give them a little more breathing room when it comes to their fans. I think as the Royals do win the World Series, that this town will be going crazy for so long that even if the Chiefs do what they did last year, get into the playoffs, blow a big lead.
No, that's always
our favorite
I
thing.
think that people gonna just like put in that queue up that Royals highlight film and watch that A's game all over again, and that Angels series, the Orioles series, and feel good about themselves. So I think for so long, at least in my lifetime, I think the Chiefs have been, at least since the '90s, Kansas City's big hope to kind of prove to the rest of the world that they're a big time sports town and they got big time sports teams here. And so I think if the Royals do that, it can help the Chiefs out in that way. But yeah, certainly at some point the Chiefs got to deliver as well.
Well, Jeff, I want to bring up a couple weeks ago. We saw your E60 with Jamal Charles, which I thought was just a riveting segment. Did such a wonderful job with that, really engaging, and a lot of things that I didn't know about Jamal and some of his history and growing up and stuff. What did you learn most about Jamal that you didn't know before? And obviously he talked about the Javon Belcher situation for the first time, really, since that had happened. He kind of broke the silence on that. What did you gauge from his reaction about how he's feeling about that now? Do you feel like he's kind of forgiven Javon, or is it still really a point of contention for him?
Well, I think the big thing for me that I didn't know was just the disability he had, the learning disability, where it was really, I always wondered why he was such a quiet guy. He didn't do a lot of interviews. Not much public speaking, and now you kind of know it's like he was really had a hard time with it. It really was a challenge for him early in his life, and I think that he's getting to a point in his life where he feels like he's past that. Like he can show people who he really is, and if people want to make fun of him for how he speaks, he's mature enough to handle that. And it really impressed me just his wherewithal. Like this is a guy who, was so as much as he's done on the field. He was just as proud to be, second team All Big 12, All Academic when he was a sophomore in college in Texas. But he's got the work ethic, he's got the pride, and he's got the desire. He's. I think when it came to the Javon Belcher situation, I think what happened there that aside from him blaming himself, which was the revelation to me that he still feels like he could have prevented that in some way. I think that he's really all about family, and he's. Family's helped him get to where he's at, and I think when he lost Cassandra Perkins in that tragedy, it was a huge blow to him because he lost his grandmother when he was 7 years old, and he really felt, the second grade kid, he wanted to find a way to bring the family together through sports, through his accomplishments. And I think this tragedy was hard for him to handle because there was no easy idea for how to fix it. It just didn't make sense. It still doesn't make a lot of sense to him. He and his wife don't talk about it very much. I think it was very hard for him to talk about it then. I was very impressed and very happy he came forward and spoke up because, as you said, there's a lot of material there that we didn't know existed within Jamal Charles.
Well, do you think the news coming out that Javon Belcher's brain showing signs of CTE may have changed or had Jamal kind of rethink the situation that happened and his feelings about Javon?
It's possible. We did the interview before that story aired. I think that story actually came out when right before the Patriots played the Chiefs on Monday night, so our story aired the next day. But I would imagine it would have to. I think at least gives you some sense of what was going on with him, with Belcher. But it's still, it was very intriguing to hear he and his wife talk about it, especially his wife, because I got the sense that Jamal was really torn between. He liked Javon, was a friend of Javon's, and the team was really supporting Javon, or really upset about Javon dying, and then his wife's cousin is in the middle of all this, who he's very close to. So a lot of situations, he was right front and center of having to decide between who he cared about more, and that's just a hard place to be.
Yeah, and during the piece, it sounded like Jamal's wife sounded like she wanted out of Kansas City and kind of get away from the situation, and Jamal signs an extension. Was there any thought, do you think, of Jamal leaving Kansas City?
No, I just think that was an emotional response, and it's just I think she even said after the piece there that she doesn't feel that strongly about it anymore. I think at the time she felt that way, and probably didn't say it as well as she would have wanted to say it. But I just think it's
strength.
those things do kind of, yeah. I mean, so those things do kind of stick with her. And look, when you go through grief, I covered police stories for the first 2 years of my reporting career, and I know it's like for a lot of people who go through these kinds of losses where it's just, you don't know how to deal with it, you don't know how to make sense of it, and it lingers for a long time. And I think that a lot of the things they say now are really just very raw, emotional statements that have nothing to do with what they really want to do long term with their lives.
Well, yeah, it was an amazing segment. We urge all our listeners to go check it out. If you didn't see it when it aired on ESPN, go check it out. I'm sure it's archived there on the ESPN website or on YouTube. Definitely check it out, Jeff. Just an amazing job there. And before we let you go, definitely want to talk about Tom Brady and the Patriots because you mentioned briefly that Monday night game that Tom Brady has a terrible game, throwing picks, fumbling. The team looks awful. ESPN says, that's it? Or it might be over. What's happened to the Patriots? Brady's career, he wants out, maybe. There was a report that came out that Brady maybe trade Brady. He's sitting at the bench alone. No one will high five him. I mean, just such a sad scene to see Brady in that state. Now they come back. They've won 3 straight games. Look like they're back on track. What do you make of the Patriots, and how have they gotten this done? And just how much of a competitor is Tom Brady? I always said he reminds me a lot of Kobe Bryant, and that just winning is all he cares about, and anything else, just get out of my way.
Yeah, well, I think that, that a lot of that, what you just said is true. I think he's a lot like Kobe Bryant. I think the more he gets challenged and tested, the more he responds to that. And I've always said that team will always be relevant as long as he's there and Belichick is there. I think they've lost a lot of key pieces, and I do think that they're not ever going to win a championship again. I think they can win 10, 11 games into the playoffs, but where you're going to see them really suffer is they don't have the weapons that really make a difference in the postseason. And you saw that on that Monday night game, where it's like Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman and Brandon LaFell and these other guys. They really don't scare you. And when you have had so much attrition, they've lost so many key players, and I think the loss of Logan Minkin was a huge loss to their offensive line. It's going to come back and haunt you. So I think they still got the ability to get up off the mat, fire some punches and remind people what they could do, but that stuff, doesn't mean as much now as it does mean in December and January. And I think what you'll see around that time of the year is the same kind of Patriots team we saw on Monday night. I think they're going to slow down and, fall apart and melt down.
Well, Jeff, as always, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. Always such a pleasure to have you on and giving us your time. Very generous with that, as always. And I know we already kept you too long as it is, so we really appreciate it. Enjoy some games this weekend. I know you'll probably be watching closely as the boys in blue take to the the San Francisco Giants team. You probably covered a lot in your time there, and should be exciting. But try to catch some football as well, man. It's going to be a nice, busy weekend for sports.
I will. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, Jeff, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And we are joined currently by the color voice of the Missouri Tigers, Mr. Howard Richards, talking Mizzou and Vanderbilt, some SEC football. Howard, we got a big Tiger Stripe game coming up at the Zoo for homecoming. Have you guys in the broadcast booth been assigned your proper color, and do you plan on adhering to the rules here?
I'm trying to find a shirt with both black and gold on it. I mean, with like, one side striped black, one side striped gold. So if I can find one, that's what I'll be wearing tomorrow.
Yes, my section is black, so I'm going to try to play by the rules. I mean, we got the season ticket holders got some stuff in the mail this week. I mean, they're really trying to make this look cool. Tennessee did it earlier in the year. They pulled it off really well. So hopefully, Missouri fans show up and make it look very very aesthetically pleasing for homecoming. But got a game to play as well, Howard, and Vanderbilt comes in obviously a complete. Really a train wreck coming into this game, but Missouri has lost at home to Indiana this year. Nothing's out of the realm of possibilities. How do you see this game playing out for the Tigers, and are they going to be able to find an offensive identity?
That's a good question, especially with regard to the Missouri's offense. As we know, they've struggled over the last several weeks, and only really being able to generate 13 points last week. Although there was an opportunity taken off the table for the Tigers when Bud Sasser was called for a legal block in the back.
Yeah.
Which you look at the replays, he never touched the guy. So they got a bad break there. nonetheless, there are many areas of improvement that the offense has to be better at. And, this is what I expect against Vanderbilt. I expect a team that has, taken its charge and realizes that these areas where they've fallen down, they know they have to improve. What I hope to see, what I expect to see is, more rushing attempts, more, just the ground game to really try to get this offense on track. When you got a quarterback that's struggling, the best thing you can do is have a good running game. And, I certainly hope that Missouri will commit to that. Additionally, more shorter routes, getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands much more quickly, more high percentage throws. So in order to do that, however, you need to have a good run game. You need to have more precision route running. Receivers have to do a better job of getting open. So offensively, that's what I expect to see. That's what I hope to see on Saturday. If Missouri's able to do that, then offensively they're going to be better. Not expecting a perfect game, but I expect improvement from what we've seen over the last few weeks. I know that they're more focused, they're working hard, and eventually it will show up, but hopefully it'll show up sooner rather than later.
Well, this Vanderbilt team looks like just what the doctor ordered for Missouri's offense to get back on track. They have 2 wins over UMass and Charleston Southern, I believe, and that is really what they just don't have a lot coming into this year with a new head coach. But as a former offensive lineman, Howard, yourself, how much of this is on the offensive line? Because we saw struggles in the Indiana game. Anthony Gotti goes down with injury. They had to do some reshuffling. How well do you feel like this offensive line, do you think it's gotten better over the last few weeks? And how much of this do you think is on the offensive line versus just shaky quarterback play and an offense that's in general just out of rhythm?
Well, it's everything. I mean, the offensive line it's had its moments, but I think of late they've been playing better as a unit, getting more comfortable with, guys being reshuffled along the offensive line. And also, I think what people have really failed to look at is that Missouri had a new offensive line coach, A.J. Ricker, who came in very, very late in the game, if you will, after Bruce Walker, former offensive line coach, abruptly retired. So AJ hasn't really had a lot of time to really work with his team and to implement a lot of his, the way he likes to have things done. And it's going to take a whole entire offseason to be able to do that. That said, the group as a whole has done an adequate job. I think that they feel that they can get better too. And again, given the adversity that they faced, I don't have a problem with the job that they've done. Everyone had a bad game against Georgia. Indiana was a not a good showing as well either. But the last 2 weeks, even though they haven't put up a lot of points, I can see signs of improvement. And I just think that it's an area that they're working towards, and they will improve as the season progresses.
How does Vanderbilt keep this game close against Mizzou? They've got a decent running back in Ralph Webb, a guy who can make plays in the special teams game with Darius Sims, but 10 penalties last week against Charleston Southern and shaky quarterback play. How does Vanderbilt keep this game close?
That's a good question too. I think with Vanderbilt, it's going to have to, as a team, it's going to have to just really give an all-out effort to try to shut down Missouri. They don't have a whole lot of weapons. I understand they may also be starting a new quarterback, Johnny McCrary, instead of Wade Freeback. Don't know if that's going to happen for certain. We won't know until it's either announced before game time or whenever. But don't be surprised if we see McCrary starting a football game. I expect to see what from Vanderbilt, what other teams have tried to do to Missouri. They've tried to blitz Missouri. They tried to put Missouri in situations, that have made the quarterback uncomfortable. Disguising blitzes, disguising coverages. That would be my approach if I were a defensive coordinator, to try to take advantage of Matty Mock, who's still a young quarterback. He hasn't even started the equivalent of a full season as yet. So he's still learning and growing in the position, and That's what I would try to do, and just take advantage of Missouri's weaknesses that they have shown. So you don't know what you're going to quite see from either team really tomorrow. One thing I do expect to see is a strong defensive effort from the Missouri Tigers. No matter who's at quarterback for Vanderbilt, I expect the Tiger pass rush to really get after the quarterback, try to disrupt him, try to hit him, and stay in his face all day long, to really prevent their offense, from getting on track in a passing game. Because that's where Missouri has had its much success, and the defensive turnovers that they forced last week, I think has gotten the defensive psyche back in action, after going 3 games without forcing a turnover. So the defense right now is head and shoulders above everyone else in this team outside of special teams, and I think they know that right now, first and foremost, that the team itself is relying on the defensive efforts to really secure a win. So that's what I look to see. I think strong defensive effort, and hopefully the offense can get back on track tomorrow.
Well, Howard, I want to go back to last week at the Swamp and just kind of get some of your personal experience from calling that game in such a legendary college football venue, a program that has always been so good, has won 2 national titles in the last decade. They've really fallen on hard times under Will Muschamp. Crazy stat, Florida has twice in the last 10 years given up fewer than 120 yards to an opponent and lost, and they're the only team that has done that over the last decade, and they've done it twice. What was your experience calling that game, inside the Swamp, and just seeing the silence as the game continued and Missouri just dominated the game?
It was interesting. It was from the standpoint of all the turnovers that Florida gave up at home. I believe it was 6 turnovers. And with Missouri's great success in special teams, I think maybe the best ever that I've ever been a part of with the Missouri football team. And then, of course, what the defense did last week. It just seemed, outside of the offense, everything just seemed to go Missouri's way when it wanted to. When they needed a big play, the team was able to come up with one. Even Shane Ray going the extra mile to block an extra point. Even when Missouri's up by 4 touchdowns at that point. So, I think those are things that when you see these types of things, you really know that a team is clicking. And it was fun to watch. I mean, it was fun to call it. We were having a lot of fun in the booth just watching how Missouri just feasted on Florida, especially in the Swamp, too. And, a couple of years ago, back in 2012, when Missouri had led Florida at halftime 7-0, and unfortunately, Missouri turned the football over 4 times in that game. I think we all sort of felt after it was over that if we played a little bit better and executed better, Missouri could have walked away with a win against Florida there. And I think, some of the guys that are on this team this year were there and realized that. They remember. Guys remember when your experience in a place, as you mentioned, is a legendary football venue. You remember what happened the last time, and if it's not good, you want to do better. You want to prove that you're a better player, that you have a better team, and you want to show your fans that you want to get it done. And I think that really had an effect on how this team came out and played against the Gators.
Well, getting back to this Missouri offense, is this just a case that they lost too much from last season, or do they have the pieces that can compete against the better competition in the SEC?
Well, they certainly did lose some key players, obviously, 3 top receivers. But I do believe that, given the experience that a lot of these guys did obtain last year and over the last couple of years, they have the players that are certainly capable to compete in the SEC. And, again, it's an evolving team. Every week, you're going to see something a little bit differently, and I think the coaches have to be a little more creative in their game plans, both offensively and defensively. You saw a much more aggressive Missouri defense against Florida last week, and I think you're probably going to see more of that in certain areas instead of them defensively sitting back and being more conservative. I think, playing a more attacking style at certain points in the football game really works to their favor. You keep the offense off guard because you're not always on the attack. You're not always playing conservatively. So if you can mix in some schemes, some blitzes, disguising your coverages, I think you give your team a much better shot at creating confusion, especially being against an offense, and really giving yourself a chance to win. And, offensively, again, the things I talked about earlier, playing more conservatively, maybe reducing the amount of plays in your game plan. You reduce that down and just have the players focus on executing X amount of plays and just doing well there. Sometimes that helps. When you condense and simplify, then your focus can be better and your execution can be better. So those are the things I think it's going to take for this team, especially offensively, to sort of get over the hump from the struggles it's had in the last few weeks.
Well, Howard, should be a great showing. Hopefully the Tigers get back in the win column once again. 3 o'clock on SEC Network at Faurot Field. Of course, be listening to you and Mike Kelly as on the Mizzou Tiger Radio Network. Always, you guys are the best. Tell you what, just you working with Mike. Mike's a guy that I, literally is one of the reasons I got into broadcasting. Just a guy that I grew up listening to as a kid, listening, not all basketball and football games were on TV back then, Howard, and we had to listen to Mike and John Cadillac and Gary Link, and I mean, you guys all are the best. You do such a great job with working with Mike, and we just really appreciate your work, man. It's always great to hear you guys.
Well, I appreciate it, and Mike's a great partner. Learned a lot from him, and just enjoy working with him, and not just Mike, but also Chris Jovino, who's our sideline reporter,
Sure.
and I think we have a great group, and we all enjoy each other's company and friends, and I think it helps our broadcast. I'm just looking forward to many more years of being able to be a part of it all.
Absolutely, Howard. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time today. Let's get a win tomorrow, and we will definitely be listening as the Tigers take on the Vanderbilt Commodores tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Howard, you have a good day. We'll definitely be listening. Have a great call tomorrow.
All right, Clint. Thank you. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.